All right, let's get started. So welcome everybody. This is our second webinar. Today we're going to talk all about Victron energy updates for 2025, some things that we saw in the later part of 2024, and things to expect here in 2025. For those who don't know, my name is Kaza Gomis with RV Solar Connections. We are a technical distributor based in Denver, Colorado, with a specialty in Victron systems. So here's the agenda for today. We won't linger on this, but we're going to look at, a lot of cool things. And with that, I'll hand it over to Peter.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Peter, and I am the technical training and key account manager here at RV Solar Connections, and I'm stoked to be here today getting this webinar out here for you guys. So kind of just we want to start with is a few small things coming out from Victron right now. And one thing, kind of a heads up, is that on newly manufactured equipment, we are moving away from the default 6-0 pins. So as you receive new equipment, you've probably already seen some of this right now, but there will be a sticker on the back of the unit, where you can find the part number and serial number, and that will have the pre-programmed pin on it. So that's just kind of, to take care of some, security as far as, logging into Victron Connect and having access to, having other people have access to your system and, kind of keep that kind of tied down for you. So keep an eye out for those new pin codes, and you will still be able to change the pin. We've also got some new packaging on boxes as you'll see those roll out. It's more sustainable, more recyclable packaging. And a small thing to start out with is we have a Smart Shunt 300 amp that's coming out. So that's going to be good for a lot of clients, who have some smaller system requirements, and where that 500 amp might be a little too large. So one thing to just consider on this 300 amp shunt is we have M8 bolts on here instead of M10 like the 500 amp. And for those of you familiar with the clean install kit that we have, we are currently designing a solution to get that 300 amp shunt to fit with that kit. You'll see at the bottom of the screen here that clean install kit is so you can mount a main battery disconnect and a shunt directly to the Lynx distributor. And another thing to notice about the 300 amp shunt is it sits a little higher than the 500 amp and has a slightly smaller footprint on it. And there's also an IP65 model with that as well. So, all right.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
Absolutely.
So now we'll dive into the new Venus OS. I'm sure a lot of you all have seen this and are familiar. For those who haven't, Victron has released a new OS. One of the, there's a lot of nice updates with it. One of the big things, though, is that there's a new user interface. And you can see here, super simple to enable. Once you've downloaded the latest firmware on the Cerbo GX, you just navigate settings, display and language, and then user interface, and you can change between the new and the updated UI. So a couple other things that are pretty cool about this. One is, you can access it through the remote console, and it's going to be a lot more responsive. For those of you who have used the VRM and the remote console, you may have noticed that sometimes there's a bit of a lag with the new UI and the new update. That's, it's pretty much as if you were right there in front of the screen yourself. It's super responsive. This is not going to be compatible with the Color Control GX for anybody who might still be using that. I think most of you are probably using the Cerbo GX or the Ekrano, which we'll touch on a little more later. But yeah, not going to work with the color control GX. And if you were using GUI mods, which it's basically a mod that you can install on a GX device to give you even more data, that's no longer available with this new interface. They have added a lot of options for visualizing data and that kind of stuff. So it might not GUI mods might not be as necessary. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. And then we've got light and dark modes. So yeah, I'm a sucker for any software or any platform that has dark mode. I just really appreciate that. So we've got that as an option now. Really nice. You can just access it from the settings and display and change between light and dark. Here's a example of the classic UI next to the new UI. Quite a bit cleaner look that we've got here. And here's the difference between light and dark mode. All right, and then here's the briefs page. So we've got our our kind of dashboard view that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, but then we've also got this briefs page, and we can see and do quite a bit from this page. So you'll see highlighted here, we've got our battery percentage, we've got a fuel percentage, right? If we're measuring a fuel gauge or a fuel tank, we've got fresh water, wastewater. We can kind of customize this as we see fit, as well as what's happening with solar, AC and DC loads, things like that, all from this brief page. And then we've also got this ability to navigate. A quick navigation of this control panel. We'll look at that here a little more in a second. First, I also want to point out that you can change the view for tanks, right? So we can look at it by percentage, we can look at it by liter. You might even be able to change this by gallon. Not 100% on that.
Yes, you are. You are able
You
to do
are.
that. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So this could be gallon if you would prefer to see that over percentage. See how many gallons are left. So that's pretty cool. And you've got again some options. You can choose which units are displayed, whether you want power or current, watts or amps, right? Some people might prefer to see amps, some might prefer to see watts. So you can kind of decide what you want to do there. Again, here's kind of a quick navigation to adjust that setting if you'd like to do that. And then the control panel up in the top left corner there, pretty sweet. So it gives you access to starting a generator, to adjusting the input current limit, right? So anybody who has had to coach a customer or a client how to adjust that input current limit on the old interface, you got to go through menus, you got to go into the device list, you got to find the inverter and click into it, maybe scroll down a little bit in order to get the input current limit, in order to access that. Now, right there, it's one click away. So that's a nice update. If you're utilizing relays from the Cerbo, you can also toggle those on and off from this control panel. So that's a nice update. And then looking back at the overview page, another really nice update here is that we do have the option to see alternator charging now. So whether you're using an Orion XS or a secondary alternator regulator like the Arco Zeus or a Wakespeed, those will show up now on your overview page. So you'll be able to see exactly how much power you're getting from the alternator, and you see how they've kind of broken up this menu. We've got our charge sources here on the left-hand side, storage and conversion here in the center, and then our loads, whether they're AC or if we have DC loads, those will be on the right-hand side.
Kaza, can I mention one thing there with
Yeah.
You were saying we can see the Orion XS or that Zeus or the wake speed on this
Hmm.
screen. Those are connected to the Cerbo, so now we have access to those on VRM. We have access to that data, so that can be very helpful.
Hmm. Hmm. Awesome. And tank displays. So yeah, super cool to see that on this overview page. If you want to quickly, identify a few of the tanks that are really important that you want to be able to really keep an eye on, you can do so here. But then you've also got, similar to the old interface, you've got a page that will show you all of your tanks, and it's pretty cool here. So if you look on the screen on the left-hand side in the freshwater area, you'll see we've got actually four tanks nested within this larger kind of freshwater widget here. So you can, at a glance, kind of look at all four tanks and see, okay, yeah, this one is low. And then you can click into that, and that's what we're seeing on this screen on the right side, and then get an even more visibility in terms of which tank is low and what's the actual percentage and what's the actual how many liters or gallons do I have left in there. So that is really slick. Okay, and now we'll pass it over to Dan.
All right. Thank you, Gaza. Yeah, my name is Dan Birkbeck. I've been here at RV Solar for just over a year now. I'm a tech support and sales representative, and see some familiar names in the attendees here. So nice to see everybody and, put a name to a face. But yeah. Um, so in addition to everything that Kaza mentioned with this new Venus OS update for GX devices, there's some new product support that's been added. One of which is the Arco Zeus alternator regulator that was mentioned previously. It's now has a DVCC integration and control from the Cerbo GX, and basically that'll just provide enhanced efficiency, safety, ease of use for any off-grid RV or marine application. Um, Basically, what that would give the end user is optimized charging and prolonged battery life, things of that nature. In addition to the Zeus and this new integration, they've added integration to for rather the Safari Star Tank, which is a wireless Bluetooth radar level sensor. Um, and it's non-intrusive. So compared to something like the Mopica sensors that the Cerbo GX also supports, Mopicas require a penetration into the tanks. These don't require any penetration, can be used for, black, fresh, gray water tanks as well as fuel. And they communicate via Bluetooth to the Cerbo, the tested range of about 40 meters, which is like 130 feet. So more than enough for most RV applications. And then in addition, the battery life is around 5 years, and can work with both metal and plastic tanks. So a good option to consider for tank monitoring going forward. All right, in the Cerbo Mark II, Victron has come out with a new iteration of the Cerbo, which is pretty much the form factor is exactly the same electronically. There's been a few changes. The primary one being now there are two VE-CAN bus ports, as you can see on the photo here. And they're fully isolated, so you've got VE-CAN 1 and VE-CAN 2. And the advantage of this is that you can have two different communication protocols simultaneously. So, VE-CAN for Victron components like the Link Smart BMS or Link Shunt, things of that nature. But also you could use RVC components such as the sea level Sol here. It's a tank monitoring unit that is compatible with the Cerbo. So this is a big improvement over the previous model. But yeah, the sea level Sol, but also it can be helpful in multiplex applications such as Firefly if you're integrating that with the Cerbo. this Mark II, it's replacing all Cerbo models. So the original Cerbo and the Cerbo S is being phased out. So now this will be the only one available. But those are kind of the main changes, as well as the RJ45 ports have been flipped around for easier installation and connection of the cables. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. And one thing I wanted to add for those who may not be familiar with the Sea-Level Sol. So this is a pretty sweet module that works alongside sea-level tank monitors. And so these tank monitors adhere to the side of a tank, similar to the Safari tank monitor that we saw previously. There are no penetrations needed. It just sticks right to the side. They are only compatible with plastic tanks, which is, that's most common for RVs and marine and mobile applications. And so these are hardwired tank sensors. So if there is any concern about replacing batteries or things like that, this is probably one of the best tank monitoring solutions that has a really tight integration with Victron systems. The Sea-Level Sol basically connects to the tanks that you have in the system. I know it can support quite a few. Do you guys know offhand how many tanks?
Yeah, it can do 7 tanks. You can do two freshwater tanks, 2 gray water tanks, 2 black water, and then it can also connect to an existing LPG sensor. So that 7th tank is the LPG. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. And so the one side of the Sea-Level Sol will connect to the tanks. The other side has an RJ45 port that just runs to, well, one of the VE CAN positions of the Cerbo. And then you reconfigure that one position to handle RVC, and you're good to go. And, that's going to give you percentages of your tanks, as opposed to some of the older style tank monitors that only give you 1/3, 2/3, things like that. In our experience, these tank sensors have been really accurate as well.
Excellent. Yeah, moving on to the Ekrano, which is the newest GX device Victron has made available. Here we go to the next slide. Yeah, so this Ekrano basically combines the GX Touch 70 with Cerbo GX all in one unit. As you can see, all your connection ports are on the back side of the screen. So you could, surface or flush mount this. And it's got all the functionality of the Cerbo Mark II with the 2 isolated VE CAN ports, as well as all the other included functions and connections, 2 relays, digital inputs, tank and temperature sensor inputs as well. The main thing that kind of would make the Ekrano advantageous over a Cerbo GX and a GX touchscreen is the increased processing power. So as you can see here, the Ekrano has got quad core processing versus the Cerbo's dual core. So this can be helpful if your application or your installation has, a large amount of VE Direct or VE CAN devices. The Ekrano can do up to 25 VE CAN devices, or while the Cerbo GX can only do up to 15. So if you need that extra processing power, or maybe you're using Node-RED for some customizations on the back end, that can take a lot of processing power as well. The Ekrano would be a good option to consider. And as noted here as well, it's got a waterproof gasket to maintain that. I think it's IP65 rated, I believe, just like the newer screens. But yeah, that's the Ekrano. And yeah, last thing here, there are new versions of the GX touchscreens available that are flush mounted. And these can either be mounted using brackets and rods, if you have access to the backside of wherever you're installing it, It's also got glue, kind of like on that photo of the Ekrano. You can use glue to kind of surface mount it, but along with the new UI, this just kind of gives you an option for a nice, sleek and modern design, and being able to just surface mount this would just make it look a little more slick than the older GX Touch you can see here, which could really only be surface mounted. So yeah. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Peter now. He's going to tell us about these batteries.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, so now we've got a new series of Smart Lithium batteries, the Smart Lithium NG, the new generation batteries. And specifically, what I want to note on this chart is now we're seeing a 48-volt battery at 100 amp hour, and as well as a new 24-volt battery at 300 amp hour. So these are going to come in handy for some larger installations. We definitely have seen. We're very happy that these are coming, or that these are here. And so the Link Smart BMS NG. So currently, this is the BMS you need to pair with these new generation batteries. And there are going to be other BMS options released in the future. And so with the Link Smart BMS, we have the 500 amp option and 1,000 amp option. And you'll size those according to your system. And for both of these, the 500 amp and the 1,000 amp, the bus connections on both sides are now M10. So that's going to factor in when you're pairing hardware and making sure that if you are connecting Link's power in or Link's distributors to this, you're choosing the M10 version of those. And those are all available currently already. So with this new generation series of batteries and the BMS, what we're seeing here is Bluetooth communication, which used to be in the battery where you would log in on Victron Connect, is now all centralized on the when you log into the BMS. And so this gives you one point of connection in Victron Connect, and you will be able to view all of your battery stats for your entire battery bank. And so you no longer have to log into each battery. And a feature that's really convenient with this is battery firmware updates. They're all taken care of at the BMS. So when you update the firmware on the BMS, it's going to push out firmware updates to your batteries, all the batteries in the bank. And if additional batteries are added to the battery bank, the BMS will automatically forward those updates to it. And since we have all of the battery information in the BMS now, one of the big updates with this new generation is we have digital communication between the batteries and the BMS. And so now we can view all the values in the BMS. We have we have the current voltage and we have temperature of your batteries, and we can view these in the BMS. And now we can also use these numbers in Node-RED to run automations or to trigger relays. So, we think like active cooling or battery heating based on the temperatures in the batteries. And because all of this battery info is available on the BMS, now we can get this information on VRM. This is going to be very helpful in a lot of situations. And with the new generation, we are capable of building larger battery banks with these, up to 50 batteries on one BMS now, and coming up from 25 on the previous generation. And for installations that warrant it, you can parallel these BMS. You can have parallel battery banks. If you need that redundancy in your system, that's an option with these, and can be helpful for a lot of folks. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, these NG batteries, they're a bit different from what we've seen in the previous Smart Lithiums. And like I was saying, we're sending values for current sensing and battery monitoring to the BMS. So that's all taken care of now within the battery. And so that's going to give us a more accurate view of what are the voltages of this. So yeah, so this communication as well has been previously was analog signals and is now digital signals, and this is kind of making for a more robust system of communication and monitoring. Something I was really stoked about was this mounting foot that's integrated on each of the batteries, and which comes with a mounting bracket as well. So that answers your questions of how do we secure the batteries in the installation. That's nice to see that Victron has taken care of that. And as well as those, we have upgraded the protection class now to IP65. So it's that means that the battery is dust proof and also watertight with a small not pressurized water if it were to get on there. So making these more robust for us. And now we have Dan talk about the Android takeover. I'm sure some of you have heard about this, but Dan will fill you in on some details.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So yeah, it's in addition to everything else we've talked about with this Venus 3.5 update, Victron's released this Android takeover feature, where essentially you can use any device running Android 6.0 or above. So, a tablet or a phone, you can turn it into a mobile screen essentially for your GX device. So it would put it in kiosk mode, and you'd effectively have a GX touchscreen at your disposal that can be used wirelessly. You could mount it close to your system, and you can take it with you as you're moving around the installation. And so this is advantageous because I mean it's a cost-effective touchscreen display option. Android tablets can be had for pretty cheap these days, plus the portability aspect. We've been testing this in-house, and a couple takeaways is that this does not work with Amazon's Fire OS tablets. Something to keep in mind. We learned that the hard way. And in addition, if you're connecting, it connects via Wi-Fi. So your two options are connect the tablet to the same Wi-Fi network that your Cerbo or GX device is connected to, or alternatively connect to the Cerbo's built-in Wi-Fi access point. And in our experience, connecting to that built-in access point to the Cerbo will get you the best results. And yeah, if you guys are interested in this, we'll leave a link to a Victron community page that shows you how to install this and get it set up. We'll leave that in the chat here for you. This is in beta, so your mileage may vary in getting it to work, but we found that it works fairly well with our in-house tests here. So yeah, Victron's actively working on it and working towards an official release, but yeah, we'll leave that link here in the chat for you for anyone interested. So
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. So a couple items that are on the verge of release. The Orion XS 1400. So this is going to be pretty sweet. It's actually, for those of you who have used the new Orion XS, it's not much larger, if any, larger than the Orion XS. What is it? It's a 50 amp model for 12 volt systems. This is a 50 amp model for 12 and 24 volt systems. I think it will have a heat sink on the back of it. But we're still going to see the efficiency gains that the XS has to offer, and just get a higher total output depending on the voltage of the system. So you guys can see from the picture here, the input and the output both range from 9 and 10, a 12 volt system, all the way up to 35 volts or a 24 volt system. So, probably most commonly you can use this for a 12 volt system where you have a 24 volt, or I'm sorry, a 24 volt lithium system where you have a 12 volt alternator. You're wanting to tap into that primary alternator. The biggest advantage this DC to DC will give you over the current Orion XS 1212 is that if you have a 24 volt lithium battery bank, you can now receive that same 50 amps, which, if we remember Watt's law, volts times amps equals watts. That gives us a total of 1400 watts as opposed to the current Orion XS 1212. We can only get 700 watts. Yeah, try not to get confused in the sense that this is it's the XS 1400, but if you've got a 12 volt system, you can see next to the input and output on the device itself, the max is still 50 amps, right? So with a 12 volt system, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the 1400 watts with a single one of these. You really see that benefit if you've got a 24 volt lithium battery bank. But of course, these can be stacked in parallel. So, you can achieve higher power outputs as needed there. This one, similar, for anyone who has used the Orion XS, it does have that built-in VE Direct port. So we will be able to monitor it both locally and in the VRM. Okay, and another DC to DC charger. Now, I know some of you might notice that this says DC to DC converter in the photo. We don't currently have a photo for this upcoming release, so we just used this one, but it will indeed be a DC to DC charger. And so this is a 12 to 48 8 amp, which is 380 watts actually. If you have a 48 volt lithium battery bank, I guess technically it doesn't have to be lithium, but that's that's going to be the most common. And so if you've got a 12 volt start battery and you want to charge a 48 volt lithium house battery bank, this will let you do that. And that's really nice because up until now, we haven't had a real option from Victron for charging 48 volt battery banks with a DC to DC charger. We've had to use alternatives. So it's really nice to see this coming out. Unfortunately, this is the Orion TR model. So this is the prior to the Orion XS, where we have communications, our VE Direct port. That's not going to be included in this model, although we do anticipate more XS models to come out later this year. So while the Orion XS 1400 on the previous slide is the next one that we're going to see, which we don't have an exact date on that yet, but I hear that it's pretty close. After that one, we're going to see 48 volt Orion XS models as well. And then, yeah, with this one, you can parallel, again, achieving higher outputs. Okay, so that's the meat and potatoes of the presentation today, guys. We're going to open it up to a Q&A, but before we do so, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. It really means a lot, and we've got a couple QR codes for those who would like to leave a quick review. That's really the best way you can support us. We really, really appreciate that. So that'll be the QR code in the top right of the screen, and you can leave a review for us. And then for anybody who wants more info, whether it's about our wholesale program or future training opportunities, or if you just are looking for some help with system design and things like that, you can scan this contact QR code. That'll bring you to our page to get in touch with us. But let's open it up to the Q&A. I see a couple questions in the chat, so we'll get to those first. But I encourage you guys, please, if you do have a question, raise your hand using the Zoom function, because just raising it physically probably won't be as helpful. So within Zoom, hit the raise hand button, and then we can actually have a conversation with you guys. And also for those who left questions in the chat here, I'll do my best to answer those. But if you want to talk more about it or want more clarification, whatever that might be, then also please raise your hand. So the first question I got was from Matt Fullard. Matt, so yeah, we've got a schedule for our hands-on training. We've actually got one coming up at the end of February. That one is already sold out, although you can join the wait list if you'd like. We've also got a hands-on training coming up in April, near the end of April, and there are still tickets available for that. We'll have more information on that here shortly, where you can register for that and those things. So yeah, we can talk about that here in a minute. Ryan, it'll let you pull nearly 100 from 12-volt alternator if you're charging from 24 volt. No, so the Orion XS, that's at a 50 amp max. So it's only going to allow you to draw 50 amps. So if you have a 12-volt alternator, oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if you have a 12-volt alternator and you're charging a 24-volt bank, yes, actually, on the input side, you will bring in that 100 amps from the 12-volt alternator as you are. Actually, as I say that, if we go back and look, it does say a max of 50 amps on this input here. So we'll actually maybe need to look and double check that, because based on this photo, I'm not sure, actually. It might only give you that full 1400 watts if you're using a 24-volt alternator, which is uncommon. That's a really good catch, Ryan. Peter, Dan, do you guys know offhand, or is that something we need to double check?
I think we definitely want to double check on that. I know, I think using 24-volt alternator with a 24-volt house system, that's kind of how you get that 1400. That's kind of how you max it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what the specs are pointing towards. So, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it does seem like in order to get that full 1400, you may need a 24-volt alternator, which is a little odd because it's not super common unless we're talking about secondary alternators and that kind of thing. So yeah, based on the specs that we're seeing here, that is probably the case, but we'll double tap that. We'll confirm. Jake, yes, Jake, you just touched on what Ryan had mentioned, and yeah, I think that is the case. And yeah, Kenny, we don't have a date yet. As soon as we do, we'll certainly push that out to you guys. Yeah, 12 to 48 XS. We want to see that too. Okay, and yes, we can make this this video and these slides available for those who may have missed the beginning. What else, guys? Any other questions?
Ryan asked again, or just mentioned like a 100 amp 1212 XS, like if that was coming. But I mean,
That'd be nice.
It'd be nice. You can put those in parallel though.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can put them in parallel. So I don't know in terms of a 100 amp model, they haven't specified when we can expect something like that. So honestly, can't speak too much to that. But yeah, for now, you can just put these babies in parallel and get that full 100 amps. And I mean, these Orion XSs are pretty small, so two of them in parallel probably going to take up, close to the same amount of space as the old Orion TRs. And no, Jake, we don't have a price yet for the XS 1400. I wouldn't expect it to be terribly more expensive than the 1250. A lot of times when we're looking at power electronics, what really drives up cost is amperage capability, and voltage usually not so much, at least not as dramatically as amperage. So being that this is still capped at 50 amps, I don't expect this to be too much more expensive than the current model Orion XS. But I guess yeah, that's we'll have to wait to see. Okay, what else? Anybody else have any other questions? Well, great. Then I think we covered it all. We're getting you guys out of here a few minutes early too, so that's always nice. Um, I'll mention that we do have. Oh, we've got a question. Here we go. Jake, what's happening?
You okay?
We've unmuted you, and yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. I just had one last question on that XS 1400. Being able to parallel those and potentially put it with a high output 24-volt alternator, what's the, I guess, like, what would be the drawback or comparison between that kind of output and the using an Arco Zeus like alternator regulator? You're talking about much more complex wiring versus the XS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, you can buy, if you've got a 1400 Orion XS, then you get it. It's a bit simplified, right? You're not dealing with harnesses and having an external regulator controlling an alternator and things like that. I think probably the biggest advantage to using a Zeus is going to be just overall output capability. And we'll have to look at some of the different 24-volt models that are available. I know there's a few of them out there, and kind of compare what that output looks like. But as you mentioned, it's like, okay, we can put these in parallel now. And so if we've got a capable 24-volt internally regulated secondary alternator, well, now that's going to simplify installation of the alternator itself. It's going to simplify having to run, these harnesses and things like that to control the secondary alternator. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, you very well could achieve the same output capability using a couple Orion XSs in parallel. Relative to what you might see using a 24-volt externally regulated alternator. So that's a really good example of a use case that these Orion XSs, a gap that they will fill.
Awesome. Thanks for the answer. I appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I see we got one from Christian. Christian, what's happening? So we've unmuted you on our side. I think you'll need to unmute yourself from your side.
Hello, can you hear
There
me?
we go. Yep, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
thank you. Hey, Casa, when will be the next course in person?
Next in person, so we've got one at the end of February. If the link that's on the screen right now, that QR code, if you scan that, that'll bring you to our page with the current training events we have scheduled. We plan to do quite a few of them this year, 5 or 6. Right now, we have 2 of them with dates actually outlined. And so the next one is going to be at the end of February. That one is currently sold out, but I'd encourage you to join the wait list because sometimes folks have to drop off. But then we've got another one coming up in April, so not too far away. And that one, there are still tickets available. So yeah, the QR code on the screen, that'll bring you to the page where you can register for those hands-on trainings.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Casa.
Christian. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got
Any other
another
questions?
There's another question in the chat from
Yeah, what do we
Ryan.
got?
Says any expertise on batteries with built-in heaters running with DVCC in terms of the heaters not quite working properly. Not too many models that it's even relevant for, like the Epic 48-volt server rack. It's a study to ask.
That's interesting. So batteries with built-in heaters running with DVCC. Honestly, I don't know offhand. I'll open it up to Dan and Peter. I know Dan's worked a little more with the Epoch batteries. I will say I know they did have Epoch specifically has some trouble with their communications in terms of especially the integration with Victron wasn't quite as tight as I think we'd all hope it to be. From what I understand, they have, had some significant effort in that area to improve that. But yeah, Dan, do you have any insights on this?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that a little bit. I don't know. The only thing that comes to mind is maybe the shared temperature sense feature of DVCC could be passed to the battery, but I don't think there's a way to pass like the internal temperature reading from Epic's battery to the Victron system. So if that's what you mean, I don't think that's possible. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure how that would integrate, if at all.
Yeah, I don't know why enabling DVCC would interrupt the heaters in any way, other than as Dan mentioned, if they're drawing the shared temp sense, which I think is an option that you can disable within DVCC. So if you are having trouble with the heaters not working like they should, then yeah, maybe go into DVCC and look at that shared temperature sense option and see if you can disable it and see if that affects this at all and maybe resolves the issue. But yeah, that's about our experience with those. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? Cool. Well, yeah. Before you guys go, real quick, if you have any ideas, we'll leave the chat open here for a couple minutes. But if you have any ideas or desires for our next webinar, so we're going to do these every month, and it's going to be a combination of, hey, here are some new things from Victron, or maybe we'll dive deep into the Arco Zeus and externally regulated alternators and things to consider, when designing systems that incorporate those, or maybe even go more basic into kind of system design and things to consider when you're sizing a battery bank and you're sizing a solar array and things like that. Deep dives into advanced programming with the Cerbo GX and maybe even getting into Node-RED and things that you can do with that. So if there are specific things that you'd like to see in our next webinar or in future webinars, please add that to the chat. But otherwise, yeah, this I think I mentioned already, this QR code will give you more info about our upcoming hands-on trainings. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today.